In the fall of 1931 in North Dakota, a family set a table for a dinner party. 12 people sat down to it. There were children at that table. The food was home canned. It had been put up that summer by a careful woman in a clean kitchen. The jars had sealed. Every lid was tight. Nothing smelled wrong, nothing looked wrong, nothing tasted wrong. 12 people died. Not one of them was killed by hunger, honey. And this was the Depression. Hunger was the thing everybody was watching for. They were killed by supper, by a jar that looked perfect sitting on a clean shelf. And here is the part that has stayed with me my whole life. The woman who put up those jars did nothing lazy. She did what her mother taught her. She did what the neighbors did. She did what almost every woman in this country was doing that same summer. She just did not know the one rule. Today, most women in this country have never put up a jar of anything. And the ones who want to learn get handed a wall of fear. Do not do this, do not do that, you will poison your family, with nobody ever sitting them down and explaining the actual rule underneath all of it. So that is what I am going to do for you tonight. I am going to give you the whole thing, not the fear, the rule. My name is Opal Rainey. I am 79 years old, and I have lived in Harlan County, Kentucky my whole life. I was raised by my grandmother, Pearl, who fed 9 people through the Depression off a hillside. With no electric, no wages, and no store worth walking to. 9 people, honey, every winter, and she never lost a one of them to a jar. That was not luck. Pearl kept a receipt book. That is what the old women called a recipe book, a receipt. A dented tin box of cards written in pencil, thumbed all over with flour, 1929 to 1961. She put that box in my hands the week she died and told me it was not to be buried with her. This is me minding her. There are 6 things you have to get right, and they go in order. Miss the first 5 and you lose the food. Miss the 6th and you lose the person who eats it. Most everybody who cans today gets the first 4 close enough. The 5th one is where the old cookbooks start wandering. But the 6th, sugar, the 6th has been quietly stripped out of the way we... It is one simple thing you do at the stove the day you open the jar, months after the canning is done and forgotten. It is the step that saves you when every other step has already failed. It is the difference between supper and a funeral. And we are going to build all the way to it. I am not walking away from this until it is yours. Before we get into it, tap subscribe, not for me, because we are dragging one buried kitchen skill back into daylight every week around here, and there is a whole shelf of them coming. So the question is not what our grandmothers knew that we do not, honey. The question is who got paid the day we forgot it and how you take it back this season. Picture Pearl in August, 6 o'clock in the morning, before the heat. She is out in the rows with a basket, and she is picking for the jar, not for the table. There is a difference, and she was fierce about it. For the jar, she wanted beans picked that morning, firm and snapping, no rust spots, no soft ends. Tomatoes ripe but not overripe, and never one that came off a dead or frostbit vine. Nothing bruised, nothing sitting in a basket since yesterday. Here is why, and it is the plainest rule in the whole business. Canning does not fix food. It only stops the clock. Whatever is in that jar when you seal it is what you are going to open in January, only warmer and older. A tired bean does not rest up in there and come out crisp. It comes out tired and worse. The old-timers said it better than I can. You cannot can a bad bean into a good one. There is a second reason, and this one is the one that actually matters for what killed those 12 people. The danger we are talking about tonight lives in the soil. It is on the outside of your vegetables when they come out of the ground, and it is worst on the things that grow in the dirt or touch it, your beans, your corn, your beets, your potatoes. So the more dirt you carry into the jar, the more of it you have to kill later. Wash everything. Scrub what grew underground. Trim generous. Pick same day. Firm and clean. Wash it twice. Pick same day. Firm and clean. Wash it twice. Modern people agree with Pearl completely on this one. Every set of current canning instructions in this country starts the same way she did, with the quality and the cleanliness of what goes in before a jar is ever filled. Where people go wrong, what is left over. The bruised ones, the overripe ones, the sad half bushel somebody gave them Sunday that has been on the porch since. That is backwards, honey. You put your best food in the jar because that is the food you are asking to sit on a shelf for a year. You eat the ugly ones tonight. This week, if you are going to try this at all this season, do not start with a bushel. Start with what you can pick or buy fresh that same morning, and start with pickles or jam. You will understand why I said pickles in about 4 minutes. Now, what goes in the jar is easy. The next piece is the one that decides everything, and it is the piece almost nobody can explain. Here it is. This is the rule. Every food you would ever put in a jar falls on one side or the other of a line, and which side it falls on decides how it has to be canned. And if you put it on the wrong side, nothing else you do will save you. The line is acid. Some foods are sour enough to defend themselves. Fruit, jams and jellies, pickles, because you have poured vinegar over them. Sauerkraut. Those are your high acid foods, and the danger we are discussing tonight cannot grow in them at all. It simply cannot get started. Acid holds the door shut. Yeah. And some foods are not sour at all. Green beans, corn, peas, beets, carrots, potatoes, greens, every meat, every bird, every fish. Those are your low acid foods. The door is wide open in there. The scientists put a number on it, a pH of 4.6. Below that number, the danger cannot grow. Above it, it can. But you do not need to carry a number around, honey. You need to carry the sorting. Sour foods, fruit, pickles, one method. Everything else, vegetables, meat, fish, a different method entirely, and there is no substitute for it. Now, tomatoes. I want to be careful here because tomatoes are where good people get hurt. A tomato sits right up against that line, and the modern varieties are bred sweeter than the ones Pearl grew. So the current guidance is that you add acid to every jar of tomatoes. Bottled lemon juice or citric acid measured every single jar, no eyeballing, and then you may treat them as a sour food. Add the acid and they are safe. Skip it and you have quietly moved that jar to the other side of the line without knowing it. Bottled lemon juice, honey, not fresh squeezed. Fresh lemons vary and bottled is standardized. That is not fussiness, that is the whole point of the rule. Sour goes in the water bath. Everything else goes under pressure. Tomatoes only after you acid them. Sour in the water bath. Everything else under pressure. Tomatoes only after you acid them. And here is the vindication. Sugar, straight from the government that let this knowledge slip in the first place. The United States Department of Agriculture and the Centers for Disease Control both say it in plain writing today. Pressure canning is the only recommended method for canning low-acid foods, all fresh vegetables, all meats, poultry, fish, seafood. The line is real. They drew it, they published it, and almost nobody hands it to a young woman when she asks how to start. Where people go wrong, a woman learns to water bath from her mother with pickles and peaches, which is correct and safe, and then one August she has a big run of green beans and she uses the only pot she owns. Same jars, same lids, same beautiful sealed pop on the counter. She has done everything the same and she has crossed the line. That is not carelessness. That is not being told. This week, go look at whatever canning you already have on a shelf or whatever you were planning to put up. Sort it into 2 piles in your head. Sour, everything else. That is all. If everything in your plan is on the sour side, a water bath is genuinely all you need, and you can start this weekend. If there are green beans in that plan, stay with me, because the next piece is why your biggest pot cannot do the job. Stop with me a second, honey. Everything I have told you so far, Pearl could have taught you standing at a sink on a Tuesday. Pick clean, sort by sour. That is the easy half. What is coming in the next 3 pieces is where the whole thing actually got taken away from women in this country, and where the 12 people at that table in 1931 were already lost, though supper was still 6 months off. This is the piece with the number in it, and once you have the number, you will never be confused about canning again. Picture Pearl's kitchen in the heat of August. A big blue speckled pot on the wood range for the pickles, and beside it, up on the shelf where it lived all year, a heavy thing with a lid that clamps down and a little gauge on top. She had bought it secondhand, and she treated it like a Bible. Here is why. Water boils at 212 degrees. It does not matter how big your pot is, how hard it rolls, or how long you leave it. Boiling water in an open pot stops at 212 degrees and stays there. That is a wall. And the thing we are afraid of tonight does not die at 212 degrees. It does not die there because it is not living when you seal it in. It is asleep. It is a hard little dormant seed of a thing, a spore. And it comes in on the dirt, and it will ride right through a boiling water bath completely unbothered. That is not a scary story. That is documented, plain, in the government's own food safety writing. Then you set the jar on a shelf. Dark, no air in there, not sour, not cold. And that seed wakes up in exactly the conditions you just built for it. And what it makes is a poison that you cannot see, cannot smell, and cannot taste. To kill the seed, you have to get past that wall. And the only thing in a home kitchen that gets past 212 is a pressure canner. Under pressure, the temperature inside climbs to 240 degrees and better, and that is where the seed finally dies. 212, it lives. 240, it does not. That is the whole difference, sugar. That is why your big pot cannot do beans. Not because it is not hot enough for your taste, because there is a number and it is on the other side of it. 212 is a wall. 240 is the answer. Only pressure gets you there. 212 is a wall. 240 is the answer. Only pressure gets you there. Now, I know what a pressure canner sounds like to a woman who has never used one. It sounds like something that is going to blow up in your kitchen.
Let me tell you plainly, the ones they make now have safety releases, and the old ones did not.
They are not the rattling bombs your mother was afraid of, and they cost less than 1 month of what a family spends on groceries. Learn it once and you own it for 30 years. 2 more things, and these come from the current guidance, not from Pearl.
Do not use one of those electric multi-cooker appliances for canning low-acid food, even the ones with a canning button on the front.
The authorities specifically say not to. And processing times change with your altitude. If you live up high, water boils cooler and your times go up. It is looked up, not guessed. Where people go wrong, the oven. There is always somebody who will tell you they can theirs in the oven or on the counter with hot syrup and no processing at all, open kettle they call it. Both of those are the same mistake as the big pot, wearing a different hat. Dry oven heat does not do what water and pressure do. This week, if there is a pressure canner in your family, in a garage, in an attic, at your mother's, go find it. Look at the gauge. If it is the kind with a dial, your county extension office will test it for accuracy, most of them for free. And that is a phone call you can make tomorrow morning. Now, the jar itself, because you can do all 3 of these right now and still lose a whole batch to a 1/4 inch. The jar is the machine, honey, and every part of it does a job. Picture the table. Sterilized jars sitting hot, a little kettle of lids in warm water, a funnel, a ladle, and a wooden chopstick. Pearl used a whittled stick for running down the inside of the jar to chase the air bubbles out. Fill the jar and leave the room. That is what the old women called the space at the top, headroom, headspace, and you have to leave the right amount of it. Too little and the food swells while it processes and pushes up under the lid and ruins your seal. Too much and there is too much air left inside to drive out, and it will not seal at all. The tested recipe tells you the amount, and the amounts are different for different foods. That is not a suggestion, it is arithmetic somebody already did for you. Then run your stick down the inside and turn the jar. You will see the bubbles come up. Air pockets are hiding places. Then, and this is the one people skip when they are tired, and it is wipe the rim. Clean cloth, dampened all the way around. One seed of tomato or one thread of bean pulp on that rim is a canyon to a lid. That is your seal gone. Lid on, band on. Finger tight only, you are not wrenching it down. The air has to be able to escape during processing. If you crank that band down like a lug nut, you have sealed the door before the room has emptied. And when it comes out of the canner, hands off. Do not tighten, do not press the lid to test it. Set it on a towel out of a draft and leave it alone 12 to 24 hours. It will pop when it is ready. That pop is the sound of the thing working. Fill it right, chase the air, wipe the rim, finger tight, then leave it be. Fill it right, chase the air, wipe the rim, finger tight, then leave it be. Where people go wrong, reusing flat lids. The old zinc caps and the glass tops with rubber rings, those were made to be used again, and half the women watching have a box of them from their mother. The modern flat metal lid is not. The sealing compound on the underside is a one-time thing. Bands you reuse forever. Lids, once. This week, count your lids before jar 1. Nothing on God's earth is more aggravating than a hot canner, a full jar, and no fresh lid in the house at 10 at night. Now, I owe you a story on myself because I do not want you thinking this came to me easy. I was 11 the first summer Pearl let me do a run of beans without her standing over me. And I was proud, honey. I picked them, I packed them, I processed them, and I lined them up on that shelf like soldiers, and I was so pleased with myself I could hardly stand it. She came down the cellar steps that evening, and she picked up one jar and turned it to the lamp for a good while without saying anything. Then she said, "How long did you run these?" And I told her, and it was not long enough. I had counted my time from when I put the jars in, not from when the pressure came up, and that is a good 20 minutes of difference. She did not holler at me. That was not her way, and I have never forgotten how she did it. She carried all 9 jars up those steps, out past the smokehouse, and she poured every one of them out in the hog lot. Then she handed me the empties and said, "Now do them again tonight and count from the right minute." I cried over it. 11 years old, hot August, doing it twice. But I have counted from the right minute for 68 years, and I have never once had to wonder. There is no shame in the learning, sugar. There is only shame in the not trying. 2 pieces left, and the last one is the one I promised you. Picture the cellar in November. Cool, dark, dry. Shelves of jars with the year written on the lid in pencil, oldest at the front. And Pearl going down the rows with a lamp about once a month, just looking.
Yeah.
Where you keep them matters more than people think. Cool and dark and dry, somewhere between 50 and 70 degrees is what the modern guidance says. And Pearl's cellar sat right in there without anybody engineering it. Not the garage where it swings from freezing to 100. Not over the stove. Not in the sun. Heat and light will not necessarily make food dangerous, but they will steal the color, the vitamins, and the seal over time. Take the bands off after they have sealed and cooled. That surprises people. But a band left on can hold a lid that has quietly failed underneath it and hide the very thing you need to see. Bands off, wiped, put away, label every jar with what it is and the year, every one, and use them inside a year. Not because they turn to poison on the anniversary, but because they lose quality, and because a jar you cannot date is a jar you cannot trust. Now the tells. Pearl checked every jar 3 times, on the shelf, in the hand, and at the opening. A lid that bulges or has come unsealed, a jar that has leaked or has drips down the side, a cloudy liquid where there was clear, or a ropey, slimy look to it. Mold anywhere, any color, any amount. Food that has risen up or looks wrong against the glass. And at the opening, liquid that spurts out at you, or any smell that is not the smell of that food.
Any one of those, and the jar does not get tasted.
Not a spoon, not a fingertip, not to check. I have to be very plain here, honey, because this is where the fear comes from, and the fear is not stupid. What we are afraid of cannot be seen, smelled, or tasted. That is the government's own language.
And it is why the old habit of taste it and see is the worst advice ever handed down in a kitchen. A jar can look perfect and be wrong. That is precisely what happened in North Dakota in 1931. So the tells are not your safety net. The tells are only the obvious failures. The real safety net is coming in the next piece. Cool, dark, dry, bands off, date it, and when in doubt, out it goes. Cool, dark, dry, bands off, date it, and when in doubt, out it goes. And when a jar does go bad, do not just pour it in the yard where the dog gets it. The current guidance is to boil suspect food and the jar for a good half hour before you throw it away, or seal it up where nothing can get at it. Take that seriously. This week, take a lamp to your own shelf tonight, the way Pearl did. Bands off. Look at every lid, every seal, every side. Anything undated goes in the compost. You cannot trust what you cannot date. Now, the sixth. This is the one I promised you at the top, and it is the one nobody teaches. Here it is. Everything up to now happened in August. This one happens in January, at the stove, the day you open the jar. Months after the canning is done and forgotten, when you are not thinking about any of this at all.
You do not eat home canned vegetables or meat straight out of the jar. Not cold, not warmed. You put it in a pot and you boil it. A real rolling boil for 10 minutes before it goes near a mouth. 10 minutes, honey. That is the whole thing. And here is why it works, and it is the prettiest piece of grace in this entire subject. The seed, the spore, is tough. It rides through boiling water, which is exactly what we said back in piece 3. But the poison it makes once it wakes up is not tough at all. The poison is delicate. Heat takes it apart. So the very thing that cannot be killed at 212 degrees in August makes a poison that is destroyed at 212 degrees in January. Read that twice, sugar. Whatever went wrong upstream, a jar processed 20 minutes short by an 11-year-old who counted from the wrong minute. A rim not wiped clean, stains done in a water bath by a woman who was never told there was a line. 10 minutes at a rolling boil takes the danger apart before it ever reaches your family. That is the net under every mistake in this video. And this is not Pearl's folklore. This is the current published guidance of the Centers for Disease Control, right now, today.
Boil low-acid home canned foods for 10 minutes before eating. Corn and spinach get 20. And if you live up high, you add a minute for every 1,000 feet you sit above the sea. So in a mountain town at 5,000 feet, that is 15 minutes, not 10. Do not taste it to check first. Boil first, taste after. 10 minutes at a rolling boil. 20 for corn and spinach. A minute more per 1,000 feet. 10 minutes at a rolling boil. 20 for corn and spinach. A minute more per 1,000 feet. Now, let me tell you how this piece got lost, because it is not a conspiracy, honey. It is just how a market works. In 1919, 3 outbreaks of this same poisoning ran through this country from canned olives out of California, Ohio, Michigan, Montana, and it killed something like 18 or 19 people. And it terrified the canning industry because the whole business depended on people trusting a can. So the canners paid for a commission of scientists in December of that year, and out of that came a hard rule for the factories. 240 degrees, 40 minutes. California put an inspection law behind, and it worked. The commercial outbreaks stopped. Now think about what that did to your grandmother. The factories got the science, the inspectors, and the equipment. And the woman at home got an advertisement telling her that the can from the store was the safe, modern choice, and her own kitchen was a risk. Not the rule.
Not the 10 minutes, just the fear and a shelf of product to solve it with. By 1943, this country was still putting up more than 4 billion jars and cans at home for the war. 2 years after that, the refrigerators came and it fell off a cliff and never came back. The government did not print a proper, complete home canning guide until 1988. And by then, 2 generations of daughters had already not been taught. That is not on you, honey. They had an advertising department. You had a job. And here is the bitterest detail in the whole story, the one that ties 1919 to your kitchen. Do you know why those olives killed people when a jar of green beans that year might not have? Because olives get served straight out of the jar, cold, on a plate, at a party, uncooked. Nobody boils an olive. The families who lived were not the careful ones, sugar. They were the ones who happened to cook it. Where people go wrong, the taste test. Somebody opens a jar in January, is not quite sure about it, and takes the smallest little taste to decide. Even a taste can be enough. If you are unsure, it does not get tasted, it gets boiled, or it gets thrown out. This week, this is the one thing I am asking you to do, no matter what else you take from tonight. If there is a single jar of home canned vegetables or meat in your house right now, yours or your mother's or something a neighbor handed you, that jar gets 10 minutes at a rolling boil before anybody eats it. Not because I think you did it wrong, because 10 minutes is cheap and there is no undoing the other thing. Now go back to that table in North Dakota in the fall of 1931. 12 people, children among them. The woman who filled those jars did nothing lazy. Her kitchen was clean, her jars were sealed, her shelf was tidy. She had done what her mother taught her in a country that had not gotten around to teaching her the line or the number or the 10 minutes. 10 minutes at a rolling boil would have taken it apart. 10 minutes, honey. 12 people. That is not a story about a careless woman. That is a story about a woman nobody told. So here is your skill, and yours. Say it with me the way Pearl said it. Pick it that morning. Firm, clean, wash twice. Your best food goes in the jar. Sort it by sour. Fruit, jam, pickles, water bath. Vegetables, meat, fish, pressure. And there is no substitute. Tomatoes only after you have added bottled acid to every jar. 212 is a wall. 240 is the answer. Only a pressure canner gets you there. Look up your altitude. Right headroom, chase the bubbles, wipe the rim, finger tight, then hands off till it pops. Cool, dark, dry. Bands off. Date every lid. Bulge, leak, cloud, mold, spurt, or smell, it goes out and it never gets tasted. And then the piece the fear left out. In January, at the stove, 10 minutes at a rolling boil. 20 for corn and spinach. 1 more minute for every 1,000 feet you live above the sea. That is the whole method. That is what my grandmother did 9 times a winter for 30 years and never lost a soul. Now hear me plain before I let you go. I am not your food inspector, honey, and I am not telling you to take an old woman's word over the printed instructions. The current guidance and the tested recipes are free. The National Center for Home Food Preservation out of the University of Georgia has all of it, and your county extension office will answer the phone and test your gauge for you. Use them. I am here to give you the rule underneath so that all of it finally makes sense. And do not try to do the whole summer this week. Do one thing. Go take the bands off the jars you already have and look at every seal. That is tonight, and it is free. Or make 1 small batch of refrigerator pickles this weekend with nothing but vinegar and a jar in the icebox, no canner at all, just to get your hands in it. Or call your extension office Monday and ask them to test your mother's gauge. Or if you take nothing else, boil the next jar 10 minutes. I put up 14 quarts of beans last August out of Pearl's book. 79 years old, doing it the way an 11-year-old got taught in a cellar in Harlan County.
And every one of those jars comes to the stove for 10 minutes before it comes to my table. Every one. 68 years, and I have never skipped it once.
Tell me down below, sugar, did your mother or your grandmother can? Did she pressure can, or did she water bath everything and hope? And did anybody in your whole life ever tell you the 10 minutes? The story that gets the most replies down there is the one I go deep on next. Your people knew this. Somebody just did not get the chance to hand it down to you. Now it is yours again. And there is a girl in your family who ought to have it too. Next time on this channel, the 2-cent white powder your great-grandmother kept in a tin above the stove that raised every biscuit in America, and the year a trust set out to corner every ounce of it in this country. There is a name on the papers and a year on the ruling.
We will walk it down together. This is not a cooking channel, honey. It is a receipt box with the lid off. Waste nothing, want nothing.